The anomaly is growing. We must act.
Your scans confirm this.
Without a doubt. Then we mobilize.
The autumn
All
sun
batteries,
filtered through
target their
classroom
command
windows
ship.
at Colorado
Fire!
Springs
Lock, sir.
Elementary, casting
Direct
long
hit.
shadows
Brace for
across
impact.
rows of small desks, where 23 eight-year-olds hunched over construction paper and crayons. Their weekend art projects covered topics ranging from my family to what I want to be, with the expected chaos of childhood creativity. Lyra Corin sat in the back corner, her red hair catching the light like copper wire, her green eyes fixed on the drawing taking shape beneath her small hands. While other children sketched stick figures and houses with triangle roofs, Lyra's work showed something different, something geometric, angular, brutal in its functionality. A spaceship, not the sleek rockets of NASA posters or the fantasy vessels of Saturday morning cartoons. This ship looked like a flying fortress, layered with armor plating that her 8-year-old mind rendered in careful, precise strokes. Mrs. Patterson knelt beside Lyra's desk, her kind face creasing with curiosity and slight concern. In 15 years of teaching, she'd seen thousands of children's drawings. This one was different, too detailed, too specific, almost technical. "That's quite impressive, sweetie," she said carefully. "What are you drawing?" Lyra didn't look up, adding another row of what might have been weapon ports along the ship's hull. "My daddy's project." "Is your father an astronaut?" "No, ma'am. He's an engineer. He works in the mountain." Mrs. Patterson knew about Captain Corin. She'd met him during parent-teacher conferences, tall Nordic features, ice-blue eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. Brilliant man, devoted father. Intense in a way that made parents uncomfortable and principals nervous. "What kind of project?" she asked, though part of her already knew she wouldn't understand the answer. Lyra finally looked up, her green eyes meeting her teacher's with unsettling directness. "He's building this. He says bad people might come from the stars. He's making sure we're ready." Before Mrs. Patterson could formulate a response that balanced encouragement with gentle reality checking. The PA system crackled to life. Principal Hendricks's voice, normally calm and bureaucratic, carried an edge of barely controlled panic. "Teachers, please activate your emergency broadcast monitors immediately. There's a situation. Students should remain calm." Mrs. Patterson's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the wall-mounted screen. Around her, other teachers were doing the same, their faces reflecting the same confusion and growing dread. The screen flickered to life. Every major news network showed the same image. 21 silver ships hung in the darkness beyond Earth's orbit, each one massive enough to dwarf the International Space Station, each one gleaming with a perfection that spoke of technology humanity had only dreamed of achieving. They moved in perfect formation, elegant and terrible, their hulls catching sunlight and reflecting it back in colors that shouldn't exist. The timestamp showed they'd been there for 47 minutes. CNN's anchor, a veteran of 3 decades who'd reported on wars and disasters with professional composure, looked into the camera with naked fear. "We're receiving confirmation from NORAD, from NASA, from every space agency on Earth. These are not terrestrial spacecraft. I repeat, these are not human vessels. First contact has occurred. We are not alone." In the classroom, 23 children stared at the screen in stunned silence, except Lyra. She looked down at her drawing, then back at the screen, then at her teacher. "I told you," she said quietly. "Daddy knew they were coming." 500 feet beneath Cheyenne Mountain, in the reinforced heart of NORAD's command center, where the Cold War had been monitored and modern threats were tracked, Captain Stellan Corin stood before a wall of screens showing the end of one era and the beginning of another. He was 42 years old, 6 feet 2 inches of lean Nordic ancestry, with the kind of weathered face that came from too many sleepless nights, solving impossible engineering problems. His ice-blue eyes, the same eyes his daughter had inherited, remained fixed on the tactical displays, watching 21 contacts that shouldn't exist, maintaining perfect geosynchronous orbit. His hands gripped the edge of the command console, not trembling, steady, but gripping hard enough that his knuckles showed white, not from fear, from anticipation. From the terrible certainty that everything he'd suspected, everything he'd warned about, everything he'd been called paranoid for believing was now undeniably catastrophically true. A young lieutenant approached, tablet clutched like a shield. "Sir, your daughter's school is calling. Emergency contact protocol. Parents are being asked to—" "I know." Stellan's voice was quiet, controlled, each word carefully measured. "Contact my wife. Tell her I'll call when I can. Tell her to pick up Lyra and go home. Stay there, don't panic. Sir, they're also asking if you can explain to the other parents what's happening. Apparently your daughter told her class that you, Lieutenant Chen." The young officer fell silent. Stellan turned from the screens for the first time in 20 minutes. His face showed the careful blankness of a man who'd learned to control every micro-expression, but his eyes held something the lieutenant couldn't quite read. Sorrow, maybe. Or vindication. Or both. Tell them, Stellan said quietly, reaching for his phone and pulling up a photo Lyra gap-toothed and grinning perched on his shoulders at Garden of the Gods last summer, that her father is doing exactly what he told her he would do, keeping her safe. He pocketed the phone as the tactical display erupted in cascading alerts. Contact! The sensor officer's voice cracked on the word. They're adjusting orbit, moving to communications range. We're being hailed. All frequencies. Every frequency we have, sir, audio-visual data streams. They're broadcasting in multiple languages simultaneously. English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic. Put it on main screen. The wall of monitors coalesced into a single massive display. Static resolved into an image that would burn itself into human consciousness, that would be replayed in history classes for generations, that would mark the precise moment humanity learned it was not alone in a vast and different universe. The face that appeared was alien, yet disturbingly familiar in its basic structure. Bilateral symmetry. Two eyes, though they gleamed like molten gold, with slated pupils that spoke of predator ancestry. A mouth, though the lips were thinner than human, pulling back to reveal teeth that had evolved for rending meat. Skin covered in fine scales of deep azure shot through with veins of bioluminescent silver that pulsed in slow rhythmic patterns. The bone structure was wrong, too narrow, too angular, arched with ridges along the temples and jaw that might have been decorative or functional. The neck was longer than human proportions suggested it should be. The ears were absent, replaced by subtle membranes that flexed as the being processed sound. Not human, but not so alien that the two species couldn't recognize sentience in each other's eyes. When it spoke, the voice came through, translated into flawless English, with an accent that sounded vaguely British, as if the being had learned human language from BBC World Service broadcasts. Inhabitants of the planet you designate Earth. The golden eyes seemed to focus directly through the screen, assessing, judging, finding something wanting. I am Admiral Zephyros of the Solarian Empire, First Fleet, Fourth Expansion, acting under the direct authority of Emperor Solarius, eternal ruler of 1,247 worlds, spanning 12 sectors of this galaxy. A pause. The bioluminescent patterns along his scaled skin pulsed faster, perhaps indicating some emotion humans had no reference for. Your world has been observed. Your species has been evaluated according to the standards established by the Empire over 6 millennia of galactic civilization. We come bearing an offer of protection, of advancement, of welcome into the greatest confederation of sentient species this galaxy has ever known. Admiral Zephyros leaned forward slightly, and for just a moment, something that might have been genuine curiosity flickered across those alien features. 3 months ago, one of our scout vessels entered your stellar system to conduct preliminary evaluations. You responded with surprising aggression, crude electromagnetic pulse technology, but effectively deployed. You damaged an Imperial vessel. This is unprecedented for a species at your developmental stage. The golden eyes narrowed fractionally. We are impressed. The Empire values potential, and you have demonstrated potential. Submit peacefully to Imperial oversight, accept our guidance, and within a single generation, your species will advance centuries beyond your current primitive state. You will have access to technologies that will eliminate disease, extend life, reach the stars. Another pause, longer this time. The patterns on his skin shifted to a color somewhere between orange and red. You have one standard solar cycle, approximately 24 of your hours, to transmit your response. Choose wisdom. The alternative would be regrettable. The transmission ended. For 5 full seconds, nobody in NORAD's command center moved. 200 people, military and civilian, holding their collective breath as the implications crashed over them in waves. We are not alone. They are more advanced. They want us to submit. We have 24 hours. Then Stellan Corrin smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was not triumphant. It was the smile of a man who had spent 3 months, 97 days to be precise, building something impossible, who had argued and cajoled and nearly lost his career, convincing people to take an insane gamble, who had kissed his daughter goodbye every morning knowing he might be spending humanity's last free days with her. It was the smile of a man who'd been preparing for this exact moment and was grimly satisfied to discover his paranoia had been justified. Open a response channel, he said. All frequencies. I want Admiral Zephyros to hear this personally. Sir, General Theron Cade, the grizzled commander of North American Aerospace Defense, stepped forward. Shouldn't we consult with Washington? The president? The president gave me operational authority 97 days ago when we started the Defiance Protocol, General. We discussed this scenario specifically. If first contact occurred before completion, I was authorized to respond. Stellan's ice blue eyes never left the screen. Open the channel, Lieutenant. The communications officer's hands flew across her console. Channel open on all frequencies, sir. Broadcasting. Stellan straightened his uniform jacket, a gesture of habit more than necessity, since the alien would see only his face. He looked directly into the camera, knowing that somewhere in the dark between Earth and Moon, golden eyes were watching. Admiral Zephyrus. His voice was calm, professional, carrying none of the fear that any rational human should feel when addressing a being representing an empire of over 1,000 worlds. I am Captain Stellan Corrin, United Earth Defense Command, speaking with authorization from 47 allied nations. He let that phrase hang in the air for a moment. 47 nations, not one country scrambling in panic, not a divided planet of competing powers. 47 nations coordinated, unified, presenting a single voice. We received your offer. We appreciate the courtesy of your communication, but Earth must respectfully decline Imperial protection. A pause. Stellan's expression remained neutral, but his next words carried weight. 3 months ago, your scout vessel entered our solar system without permission and refused all requests to leave. We asked politely. We asked firmly. Finally, we made our request. More emphatic. I believe you remember that encounter, Admiral. The faintest hint of something not quite satisfaction, not quite challenge, crossed Stellan's face. You said we showed potential. You're correct, we do. But what you didn't observe during those 3 months while you were presumably gathering your fleet and planning this visit is that we've been preparing as well. He gestured and split screens appeared behind him, showing data streams, energy signatures, construction logs from facilities that officially didn't exist. We didn't spend 3 months hiding and hoping you wouldn't return, Admiral. We spent them building, creating, innovating, using every advantage we could muster, every lesson we've learned from our own violent history, every ounce of ingenuity that our species possesses. Stellan leaned forward slightly, ice blue eyes boring into the camera. When you come back, and we know you will come back, you'll discover that Earth is not quite as primitive as your evaluation concluded. We may not have your millennia of technological refinement. We may not have your empire spanning 1,000 worlds. But we have something else, Admiral. A pause. We have 3 months of preparation. We have 47 nations working together for the first time in human history. We have the knowledge that we're fighting for our right to choose our own future. And we have absolutely no intention of kneeling. His voice dropped, became almost conversational. So when you return with your fleet, and please don't insult my intelligence by pretending you won't know that you won't find the primitive species you cataloged 3 months ago. You'll find humans who've made every single day count. Stellan nodded to the communications officer. The channel closed. The command center remained silent for perhaps 10 seconds before erupting into barely controlled chaos. Calls to the White House, to the Pentagon, to NATO headquarters, to the United Nations. The machinery of global response grinding into motion with ponderous urgency. But Stellan Corrin was already moving toward the elevator that would take him deeper into the mountain, to the levels that didn't appear on any official schematic, where 3 months of frantic round-the-clock construction had transformed theoretical designs into brutal reality. He pulled out his phone as the elevator descended, dialing home. Mira answered before the first ring finished. I saw. The whole world saw. Is Lyra? She's fine, drawing more pictures of your ship. Won't stop. Stellan, is it really? Yes. His voice cracked just for a moment, the careful controls slipping fractionally. Yes, it's ready. As ready as we can make it. Probably not ready enough. Silence on the line. He could picture Mira standing in their kitchen, one hand pressed to her mouth, the other gripping the phone like an anchor to normalcy. Come home tonight, she whispered. Just for a few hours. Let Lyra see you. She's scared, Stellan. She's 8 years old and she's terrified, and she needs her father. I will, I promise. After I check the final systems. After I brief the crew. After. Don't make promises you can't keep. Then I'm not promising. I'm stating fact. I will come home tonight. I will tuck Lyra into bed. I will tell her everything's going to be okay. Will it be? Stellan closed his eyes as the elevator descended deeper into darkness. Ask me in 24 hours. He hung up before his voice could betray him further. The elevator doors opened onto a sight that still took his breath away even after 3 months of watching it take shape. The Defiance. 400 meters of ugly, brutal, magnificent human engineering. It looked nothing like the sleek alien vessels, nothing like humanity's own spacecraft, the streamlined capsules and elegant shuttles designed for efficiency and grace. It looked like exactly what it was, a weapon built by a species that had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing its own kind, and had finally desperately turned that expertise outward. Not sleek, not elegant, not refined, redundant, over-engineered, resilient. Every system backed up 6 times because they assumed everything would fail. Every weapon designed with multiple firing solutions because they assumed nothing would work on the first try. Every armor plate layered because they assumed they would be hit and hit hard. The ship was a statement: we know we're outmatched. We planned for it. Dr. Alara Voss approached from the engineering bay, her British accent crisp, despite the exhaustion evident in her 51-year-old face. Captain, final systems check complete. Gravitational lens emitters are calibrated. Fusion containment is stable. Railgun targeting solutions are loaded. Distributed AI network is synchronized. She paused, looked up at the massive ship. She's ready as she'll ever be. Crew status: 700 souls. Average age 47. Everyone a volunteer who understood they might not come home. Everyone who decided that was acceptable if it meant their children would stay free. Stellan nodded slowly. 700 out of tens of thousands who'd applied. 700 who'd made it through psychological screening, technical training, emergency combat preparation. 700 who would crew humanity's first and possibly last true warship. His responsibility, his burden. How long until we can launch? Physically 12 hours. But Captain, Alara's voice softened. Go home, see your family. The ship will be here when you get back. Lyra won't always be 8 years old and needing her father. Stellan looked at her sharply. How did you? Because I have a daughter too. She's 23 now. I missed too many of her childhood moments for projects that seemed critical at the time. Don't make my mistakes. He stood there for a long moment, torn between duty and family, between the 700 who would depend on him and the one person who depended on him more. 4 hours, he said finally. I'll take 4 hours. Then I'm back. Fair enough. The drive home felt surreal. Traffic was snarled, people flooding stores for supplies no one needed, panic buying driven by instinct rather than logic. Some stores had closed entirely, owners going home to families. Others stayed open, charging triple prices for bottled water and canned goods. The world was ending or beginning or both, and no one knew how to respond. Stellan parked in his driveway in suburban Denver and sat for a moment, hands still on the wheel, gathering himself. The front door opened before he could reach it. Lyra crashed into him, 8 years old and all elbows and knees and desperate hugs. Daddy! He lifted her, held her tight, buried his face in her red hair, and allowed himself this one moment of pure father-daughter connection before duty called him back. Hey, sweetheart, I'm home. Are the aliens going to hurt us? Direct, honest. She'd always been like that, cutting through pretense to the core of things. They're going to try to make us do what they want, he said carefully, carrying her inside where Mira waited. But Daddy's not going to let them. Because you built the ship. Because I built the ship. Because 47 countries helped. Because a lot of very smart people spent 3 months making sure we had a way to say no and make it stick. Lyra pulled back to look at him with those green eyes, so much like her mother's, but with his own intensity behind them. Will you have to fight them? Maybe. Will you be safe? I'll be careful. That's not the same thing. Mira laughed, a sound edged with hysteria. She's got you there. They sat together on the couch, the three of them, Lyra between her parents, watching news coverage that repeated the same images over and over. The alien ships, Admiral Zephyros's message, Stellan's response. Experts speculating wildly about alien intentions, human capabilities, the probability of war or peace. Turn it off, Stellan said finally. Mira did, and silence filled the house. Real silence, not the background hum of television panic. Tell me a story, Lyra said, like when I was little. You're still little. Tell me anyway. So Stellan told her about the time humanity went to the moon, about brave men in primitive spacecraft who looked at the impossible distance between Earth and Luna and decided to try anyway. About how they succeeded, not because they had perfect technology, but because they prepared for everything to go wrong and then improvised when it inevitably did. about how being human meant facing the unknown and choosing to move forward despite fear. Lyra fell asleep on his chest halfway through, her breathing slow and even. "You should put her to bed," Mira whispered. "In a minute. Stellan, if you don't come back." "I will." "You can't promise that." "Then I'm making an impossible promise." It wouldn't be the first time humans attempted the impossible. He carried Lyra to her room, tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead. She stirred slightly, mumbled something about spaceships, settled back into sleep. Mira found him standing in the doorway watching their daughter sleep. "You need to go," she said. "I know, but not yet." "Not yet." They stood together in silence, watching Lyra breathe, memorizing this moment against the possibility that it might be the last normal moment any of them ever had. When Stellan finally left 2 hours later, driving back towards Cheyenne Mountain, and the ship that would either save humanity or prove inadequate to the task he carried with him, the weight of every father who'd ever gone to war. The difference was that this time the war would be fought not just for territory or ideology or resources. It would be fought for the right to choose, for the right to be human on humanity's own terms, for Lyra and 8 billion others who deserve to grow up free. The Defiance waited in its underground berth, brutal and ready. In 23 hours they would launch. In 24, Admiral Zephyros would have his answer. And the galaxy would learn what happened when an empire met a species that preferred death to submission. The alien scout ship had arrived on a Tuesday in late July, dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system in a burst of energy that every radio telescope on Earth detected simultaneously. For 6 hours it hung there at the heliopause passive sensors, drinking in data about the third planet's primitive inhabitants. Then it moved inward, accelerating at rates that violated every law of physics humanity understood, crossing distances that should have taken months in mere hours. By the time it reached Mars orbit, every government on Earth was scrambling. Every news outlet was broadcasting the same grainy images. Every telescope was trained on the sleek silver teardrop that represented the end of humanity's cosmic solitude. The scout ship ignored all attempts at communication. It simply watched its sensors penetrating atmosphere and ocean and crust, cataloging everything. Population centers, industrial capacity, military installations, power generation, agricultural output. The complete inventory of a species about to be evaluated for imperial integration. Stellan Korn had been in a very different kind of meeting when the call came. Not NORAD, not any official military facility. A small research campus outside Colorado Springs funded by a black budget so classified that most members of Congress didn't know it existed, staffed by people whose expertise was so specialized they could barely explain their work to anyone outside their fields. The Extraterrestrial Technology Assessment Group. For 7 years, 15 scientists, engineers, and analysts had been meeting weekly to discuss anomalies. Small things, strange things, things that most people dismissed as glitches or coincidence or misidentification. The Voyager probe that stopped transmitting in 2018 then restarted 3 days later with its memory banks completely wiped. The Mars rover that photographed a perfect geometric cube, half buried in Martian regolith, then mysteriously malfunctioned before it could approach for closer analysis. The Deep Space Network detecting a transmission in 2020 that lasted exactly 7 seconds, carried information density impossible for natural phenomena, and then never repeated. A dozen other incidents over 7 years, each one explainable individually. Together they formed a pattern. Someone was watching Earth. Stellan and 14 other very smart, very paranoid people had been right. And being right might cost humanity everything. "It's here." Dr. Alara Voss burst into the conference room without knocking, tablet thrust forward. "The scout, it's actually here. Mars orbit, descending." The room didn't erupt in panic. These were scientists and engineers. They erupted in vindication. They'd been right, and now they had to figure out what to do about it. General Theron Cade stood at the head of the table, a bull of a man gone silver with age, but not soft, a veteran of 3 wars preparing for a 4th he'd prayed would never come. "Show me everything." The wall screen came alive with real-time feeds from observatories worldwide. The scout ship hung there in the black, its surface rippling with colors that didn't quite fit into Earth's visible spectrum, its movements precise and purposeful. Beautiful. Wrong. Terrifying. "What's it doing?" someone asked, voice tight. Stellan stood, walked to the screen, hands clasped behind his back in the pose of a man solving a complex engineering problem, which in a sense this was. "Cataloging us," he said after a long moment of analysis. "Look at the scan patterns. Systematic. Thorough. It's not just observing. It's taking inventory, building a complete picture of what we are, what we have, what we can do." Dr. Ilara Voss pulled up additional data streams. The energy signature is beyond anything in our reference database. The power generation alone suggests technology centuries beyond our current capabilities. And this is just a scout, a probe. Imagine what their actual warships must look like. The room fell silent as that implication sank in. General Cade's jaw worked for a moment before he spoke. Options. I need options. We can't fight it, someone said immediately. We don't have the technology. We can't communicate with it. It's ignoring every frequency we're broadcasting on. We can't just let it study us like specimens in a lab. All eyes turned to Stellan. He continued staring at the screen for another 30 seconds, watching the alien vessel move with inhuman precision, processing implications and possibilities in the narrow path between submission and annihilation. We do have one advantage, he said quietly, one thing they won't expect. What's that? We know we're primitive. We know we're outmatched. We know we're being cataloged for potential conquest. He turned to face the room. So we give them exactly what they expect to see. A primitive species, chemical rockets, nuclear fission, completely outclassed technology. Let them think they've taken our full measure. General Cade's eyes narrowed. You're proposing we deliberately look weak. I'm proposing we look exactly as weak as we actually are. But while they're congratulating themselves on their superior intelligence, we use the time they've given us to prepare properly. Prepare how, even if we had years? We won't have years, we'll have months at best. But months might be enough if we're smart. Stellan pulled up theoretical schematics he'd been working on for 3 years, designs that had been academic exercises until this moment. They'll use energy weapons, perfect, efficient, elegant. So we don't try to match energy with energy. We bend physics instead. Gravitational lensing. Their beams won't penetrate. They'll slide off. More schematics appeared. They'll have shields designed to stop energy weapons. Perfect, efficient, elegant. So we don't use energy weapons. We use kinetics, mass, simple Newtonian physics. A grain of sand at near light speed carries enough energy to punch through any shield designed for energy deflection. This is all theoretical, someone protested. We've never built anything remotely like this. We've never needed to. Stellan's voice hardened. We need to now. The question isn't whether we can. The question is whether we will. Whether we're willing to gamble everything on an engineering project that violates half of what we know about physics and the other half of what we know about good sense. General Cade studied the schematics with the eye of a man who'd seen impossible situations turn possible through sheer bloody-minded determination. How long to build this? With unlimited resources, no oversight, and every cooperative nation contributing their best people, 3 months. Maybe. With some, you have 97 days. Sir, because in 97 days, Captain Corrin, you're going to take that scout ship offline in a way that makes them think we got lucky, that we're desperate primitives who stumbled onto one crude countermeasure. And while they're preparing their response fleet and congratulating themselves on how easy the conquest will be, you'll be finishing this. He gestured at the ship designs. What are you calling it? The Defiance Protocol. Good name. Make it work. The meeting lasted 22 more hours. By the end, they had a plan. It was desperate, expensive, probably impossible, and absolutely necessary. Phase 1, make the scout ship leave using primitive electromagnetic pulse technology. Crude. Simple. Exactly what a species at Earth's development level might manage if they got lucky. Phase 2. While the aliens were presumably gathering a larger fleet for formal first contact, build the Defiance. A warship designed not to match alien technology, but to exploit its assumptions. Phase 3. Survive long enough to negotiate from a position of strength. Simple. Impossible. Essential. 68 days later, Stellan Corrin floated in the cargo bay of a modified SpaceX Dragon capsule, watching Earth curve away beneath him, and prepared to commit humanity's first deliberate act of interstellar warfare. The alien scout ship had spent 9 weeks in Earth orbit, its scans growing progressively more detailed, more invasive, its sensors penetrating deeper into atmosphere, ocean crust. Learning everything, preparing the database that would inform the Empire's approach to integrating this primitive species. Time to corrupt that database. Target acquired. Soren Brightwell's voice came through the comm, crisp and professional. The Australian pilot had logged more EVA hours than anyone alive and approached this mission with the same methodical calm she'd shown during 7 Mars missions. Range 2 kilometers in the closing, no defensive response detected. Stellan checked the device clamped to the Dragon's exterior one final time. It looked unimpressive, a cylinder about the size of a car tire studded with capacitors and wrapped in crude electromagnetic shielding that would have made any real engineer cringe. An EMP bomb, electromagnetic pulse, technology that humanity had essentially perfected in the 1960s and then mostly abandoned as crude and indiscriminate, perfect for this mission. 1 kilometer, still no response. Either they don't see us as a threat or they're curious what we're attempting. My money's on both, Stellan murmured. Keep closing. The scout ship grew larger in their viewport, filling the screen with its impossible silver perfection. Its surface rippled with those not-quite colors that made human eyes water after too long. Stellan forced himself to keep looking, to memorize every detail for the databases they were building. 500 meters, I can deploy the package. Do it! The dragon's robotic arm extended with painful slowness, the EMP device gripped in its manipulators. Closer, closer. The alien hull filled their entire field of view, now close enough that Stellan could see microscopic details, what might have been sensor arrays or decorative etching or something beyond human comprehension. Contact. Magnetic clamps engaged with a solid thunk that transmitted through the dragon's frame. Package secured, breaking away now. Thrusters fired, pushing them back. 100 meters, 200, 500, a full kilometer. Detonate on my mark, Stellan said. His finger hovered over the trigger. One chance. If the EMP failed, the aliens would know humanity had tried active resistance and failed. The element of surprise would be gone forever. If it succeeded, they'd have 3 months. Maybe. 3, 2, 1, mark. His finger came down. For a single instant, the EMP device generated an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to be detected on Earth's surface, strong enough to crash every unshielded electronic system within a 2-kilometer radius, strong enough to overwhelm the alien scout ship's perfectly refined systems that had been designed to handle energy weapons and particle streams, but had never encountered something as crude and brutal as an electromagnetic bomb detonating directly against its hull. Every light on the scout ship went dark simultaneously. Its engines cut out. Its perfect, elegant systems, refined over millennia of technological advancement, crashed all at once. It tumbled dead and dark through the void. Holy hell, Soren Brightwell whispered. It actually worked. It actually bloody worked. Stellan was already on the comm to NORAD. Package delivered. Target neutralized. Begin Phase 2 immediately. We are now on the clock. Phase 2 was simple in concept, brutal in execution. Broadcast the attack on every frequency, in every language, with full video documentation. Let the scout ship's mother fleet see exactly how their scout had been disabled. Let them see a primitive species using crude electromagnetic warfare. Let them see desperation, not strategy. Let them underestimate Earth for 97 more days. The scout ship's systems came back online 43 minutes later, its autonomous repair protocols fighting through the damage, bringing backup systems online, purging corrupted data. It limped away from Earth orbit without completing its survey. Its evaluation of humanity logged as species, Homo sapiens technological level, primitive late industrial/early information age, threat assessment minimal integration, difficulty low recommendation, standard diplomatic overture backed by military superiority, expect submission within 1 standard cycle. Note, species demonstrated unexpected resistance with crude EMP technology. Recommend overwhelming force to prevent further resistance. Admiral Zephyros, receiving the report 3 light-years away aboard the Imperial flagship Sovereign Fist, read it 3 times. Primitive species, crude technology, minimal threat, recommendation overwhelming force. 20 battlecruisers should suffice, more than enough to make submission inevitable while not risking valuable Imperial resources on what should be a straightforward integration. He began assembling his fleet. And on Earth, Stellan Korin descended through the atmosphere, through the clouds, back to solid ground, where his daughter waited to ask if he'd seen the aliens. Not up close, sweetheart, he told her, lifting her into his arms in their driveway, while neighbors gawked and news helicopters circled overhead. But I did just give them a very strong message about leaving us alone. Did they listen? For now, but they'll be back. Will you be ready? Stellan looked over Lyra's red hair, at the news vans, at the neighbors filming on their phones, at the world that had just learned it wasn't alone in the universe. We will be. 97 days. That's all we need. Mira appeared in the doorway, and Stellan could see in her astrophysicist's eyes that she'd done the math. 97 days to build something that should take years. To unite nations that had spent centuries in conflict. To create weapons that existed only in theory. Don't make promises you can't keep, she said quietly. Then I'm not promising, Stellan replied. I'm stating objective. We have 97 days. We're going to make them count. And deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, construction accelerated to a pace that violated every safety regulation and good engineering practice humanity had ever developed. The Defiance began to take shape. Day 14 of construction. The Defiance existed only as a skeletal framework, titanium bones arranged in a shape that looked more like a mistake than a spaceship. Workers from 47 nations moved through the underground berth in carefully choreographed chaos welding wiring, arguing in a dozen languages about load-bearing calculations and power distribution networks. Stellan Koren stood on a gantry 300 feet above the construction floor, watching Japanese engineers install the first fusion containment module, while German physicists argued with Indian software specialists about distributed AI architecture. Dr. Ilara Voss found him there, tablet in hand, exhaustion evident in every line of her face. We have a problem. Which one? We have 17 critical problems as of this morning's briefing. 18 now. The ceramic composite for the armor plating is cracking under stress tests. The Brazilian team says we need to adjust the mineral ratios, but that means refabricating 12,000 individual plates. That's 3 weeks minimum. We don't have 3 weeks, we have 83 days. I'm aware of the timeline, Captain. Ilara's British accent sharpened with frustration. I'm telling you the physics won't cooperate. The material fails at the temperatures we need it to withstand. Stellan stared down at the skeletal ship, mind racing through alternatives. What if we don't try to prevent the cracking? What if we design for it multiple layers, each one designed to ablate and crack and shed heat, protecting the layers beneath? That's actually brilliant. Crude but brilliant. Like everything else about this ship. She made notes on her tablet. I'll run the calculations. It might work. It has to work. We don't have time for might. Ilara hesitated then. Stellan, can I ask you something? Always. Why, you were a civilian aerospace engineer 3 months ago. Good at your job, certainly, but there are flag officers with decades more experience. Why did they put you in command of humanity's first warship? Stellan was quiet for a long moment, watching the construction continue below. Because the flag officers think in terms of what's possible within regulations and established doctrine. This ship violates both. It violates physics in 6 different ways. It's over-engineered to the point of absurdity. Every established aerospace principle says it shouldn't work. And I'm the one who's been arguing for 7 years that we need to think differently. That if we ever met aliens, they'd have different technology, different assumptions, different weaknesses. The brass thinks I'm crazy, but they're willing to bet humanity's future on my particular brand of crazy because conventional thinking got us exactly nowhere. He turned to face her directly. I don't know if the Defiance will work, Ilara. I don't know if we can build it in time. I don't know if we'll survive contact with an empire that's conquered over 1,000 worlds. But I know that doing nothing means submission. And I'd rather die trying the impossible than live knowing I didn't try at all. Ilara nodded slowly. Then let's get back to making the impossible work, starting with armor that's designed to fail properly. Day 31 of construction, halfway through the timeline, and less than 1/3 complete. The international crew was showing strain, engineers working 18-hour shifts, mistakes happening from exhaustion. 2 serious accidents in the past week, one worker with a broken arm, another with severe burns from a welding mishap. General Cade called an emergency meeting. We're behind schedule, he said without preamble. At current pace, we'll have maybe 60% of systems operational when Admiral Zephyros returns. That's not enough. We're doing everything humanly possible, someone protested. Then we need to do what's inhumanly possible. Cade's voice was flat. I've authorized draft protocols. We can pull another 10,000 skilled workers from civilian sectors. Force them to work on this project. Stellan stood abruptly. No. Excuse me. I said no, General. We're not drafting people into this project. Captain Koren, I understand your idealism, but this isn't idealism. It's pragmatism. Stellan's ice blue eyes were hard. Every person working on the Defiance right now is a volunteer. They're here because they chose to be. Because they understand what we're building and why. Forced labor will give us bodies, but it won't give us the commitment we need. We need speed. We need quality. This ship has to work perfectly the first time because there won't be a second chance. I'll take 700 committed volunteers over 70,000 conscripts any day. The room was silent. Finally, Cade nodded. Your ship, your call. But if we're not ready when they come back, we will be. Not because we force people to work faster, Because we inspired them to work smarter. After the meeting, Stellan made an announcement to the entire construction crew. All 3,000 of them gathered in the main berth looking up at him, standing on the gantry. "I'm told we're behind schedule," he said, his voice echoing across the vast space. "I'm told we might not finish in time. I'm told we need to work faster, longer, harder." He paused. "I'm not going to ask you to do any of that. You're already giving everything you have. What I'm going to ask is this: work together. The Japanese fusion teams share everything with the Germans. The Brazilian metallurgists teach the Indians everything you know. The American software engineers collaborate with the Chinese instead of competing." His voice strengthened. "This ship represents something that's never happened in human history. 47 nations building something together, not for profit or prestige, but for survival. Every weld you make, every circuit you install, every line of code you write, that's you saying that humanity deserves to remain free, that we choose our own future." Stellan gestured at the skeletal framework behind him. "She's not pretty, she's not elegant, but she's ours. Every nation represented here has contributed something essential. No single country could build this. But together, we're building something that's going to look an empire in the eye and say no, and mean it." The applause started slowly, then built to a roar. Construction accelerated, not because people worked longer hours, but because they started teaching each other instead of hoarding knowledge. Because teams that had been working in isolation started coordinating. Because 47 nations stopped thinking of themselves as competitors and started thinking of themselves as crew. Day 57 of construction. The Defiance was beginning to look like a ship instead of a construction accident. Stellan walked the interior corridors, inspecting welds and checking power distribution nodes, when he found a young ensign, couldn't have been more than 25, sitting against the bulkhead crying quietly. He sat down beside her without speaking. After a moment, she wiped her eyes. "Sorry, sir, I'm fine." "You're clearly not fine. What's wrong?" "My boyfriend proposed last night. He wants to get married next month before whatever happens." "Congratulations." I said no. Stellan looked at her. "Why, Pom?" "Because I'm going to crew this ship, sir. I volunteered for the combat roster. 700 positions for the maiden voyage, and I'm qualified for navigation. I've been training for 6 weeks. I can't get married and then leave my husband to possibly die in space 2 weeks later. That's not fair to him." "What's your name, Ensign?" "Raina Blackwood, sir. South African cross-trained from atmospheric flight to space operations." "How old are you, Blackwood?" 29, sir." 29. Stellan felt something twist in his chest, the same age he'd been when Lyra was born, when the future had seemed full of possibility instead of overshadowed by alien warships. "Can I give you some advice, Ensign?" "Sir." "Marry him tomorrow if you can. Have those 2 weeks together. Because if we're right, if the Defiance works and we survive, you're going to want someone to come home to. And if we're wrong, if we don't survive, you'll want to have lived fully in the time you had. But that's selfish. It's human. We're fighting for the right to be human, Blackwood. That includes loving people even when the future's uncertain. Especially when the future's uncertain." She looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "Did you marry your wife knowing you might not come back?" "I married her knowing I might die in a car accident the next day." Risk is always present. The question is whether you let it stop you from living. Raina Blackwood nodded slowly. "Permission to take a 4-hour leave tomorrow, sir." "Granted. And Ensign, congratulations. Truly." Day 73 of construction. Commander Tarek Ashford, 48 years old, Egyptian-American with 20 years in desert warfare, before transitioning to space operations, found Stellan in the railgun bay at 0300 running firing calculations for the 14th time. "Captain, you need to sleep." "I'll sleep when this is finished." "No, you'll sleep now, because in 24 days you need to lead 700 people into possible combat, and you're going to need every ounce of cognitive function you can muster. Sleep is not optional." Stellan looked up from the calculations. "Did General Cade send you?" "Dr. Voss sent me. She's worried about you. So am I." "I'm fine." "You're exhausted. You've been working 20-hour days for 73 days straight. You're making mistakes. Yesterday you called the gravitational lens emitters gravity gloves in a briefing. People are starting to worry that their captain is losing it." Stellan rubbed his eyes, suddenly aware of how tired he was. "There's too much to do. There's always too much to do. That's why you have a crew. Delegate captain, trust your people to do their jobs so you can do yours. Which is leading, deciding, being the person everyone looks to when everything goes to hell." Tarek's voice softened. You can't do that if you collapse from exhaustion. So you're going to go home, sleep for 8 hours, have breakfast with your daughter, and come back ready to actually command instead of just working yourself to death. It was the most insubordinate thing anyone had said to Stellan in months. It was also completely correct. Fine, 8 hours. But if anything critical happens, we'll handle it. That's what second in command means. Stellan drove home as dawn broke over Denver, the city just beginning to stir. The world had changed in 73 days. Panic had faded into grim determination. People had adjusted to the new reality of not being alone, of knowing aliens existed and were coming. Some had embraced it, others denied it, most simply went about their lives because the alternative was paralysis. Lyra was eating breakfast when he arrived, cereal and orange juice, in a new drawing of the Defiance. Is it almost done? She asked. Almost. 3 more weeks. Will it work? I don't know, sweetheart, but it's the best we can build. That's enough then. Simple. Childish. Exactly what he needed to hear. He slept for 8 hours without dreaming, woke to find Mira watching him with concern. You look better, she said. I feel human again. Good, because Lyra needs her father, and the crew needs their captain, and I need my husband, in that order. He smiled. Noted. Day 87 of construction, completion day. The Defiance sat in its berth, no longer skeletal, no longer incomplete. 400 meters of brutal human engineering, every system tested, every backup checked, every weapon calibrated. Not elegant, not refined, but ready. The crew gathered 700 souls who'd volunteered to crew humanity's first warship. Average age 47, 23 nationalities. Everyone understanding they might not come home. Stellan stood before them on the main assembly deck and spoke without notes. I'm not going to tell you we're ready for what's coming. We're not. We built this ship in 97 days using technology we barely understand. We're going to fight an empire with 6,000 years of military refinement. The odds are catastrophically bad. He paused, looking at faces, young and old. Every shade of human skin tone, every variety of human courage. But we have advantages they don't. We know we're outmatched. We planned for it. Every system on this ship has 6 backups because we assume everything will fail. Every weapon has multiple firing solutions because we assume nothing will work on the first try. We designed the Defiance not to be perfect, but to survive being imperfect. His voice hardened. More importantly, we have something the Empire doesn't. We have 97 days of 47 nations working together. Of people setting aside centuries of conflict to build something none of us could build alone. Of choosing unity over division because survival demanded it. Stellan gestured at the ship surrounding them. This vessel was built by hands from every continent: Japanese engineering, German physics, Brazilian metallurgy, Indian software, American systems integration, British materials science, African mathematical modeling, Asian manufacturing, every piece essential, every nation critical. Oh, he let that sink in. When we launch tomorrow, we're not going as Americans or Germans or Japanese or Nigerians. We're going as humans, as a species that spent 10,000 years learning how to kill each other and finally desperately decided to direct that expertise outward, to protect instead of destroy, to defend instead of conquer. His ice blue eyes swept across 700 faces. Admiral Zephyros is coming back. He'll have 20 ships, maybe more. He'll expect easy submission. He's going to be surprised. And when he asks how we built this so fast, how we unified so completely, how we're even capable of resisting, you tell him this. Stellan's voice dropped, became almost conversational. Tell him that humans are very good at doing impossible things when our freedom depends on it. Tell him that we've fought too hard for too long to determine our own future to surrender it now. Tell him that we would rather die as free humans than live as imperial subjects. Silence in the assembly deck. Then someone started clapping. Others joined. Within seconds, 700 people were applauding, not the speech, but the commitment it represented. The commitment to try, to resist, to defy. They launched 16 hours later, the Defiance rising from its underground berth on pillars of fusion fire, climbing through atmosphere, breaking free of Earth's gravity, pointing its ugly, brutal, magnificent bulk toward the stars, toward the appointment with destiny that was now less than 8 hours away. The Imperial Council chamber on Zarathus Prime stretched 300 meters from floor to vaulted ceiling, its walls carved from crystalline rock that had taken 50 generations to mine and shape properly. Light from 3 suns filtered through it, casting assembled counselors in shifting bands of violet and gold. Emperor Solarius sat upon the eternal throne, his massive 3-meter frame draped in robes that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns of deep crimson. At 10,000 years old, he had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the extinction of species, the birth of stars. He had ruled the Solarian Empire for 6 millennia with absolute authority. Until now, that authority had never been questioned. Admiral Zephyros stood at attention before the throne, his azure scales pale with stress, his golden eyes focused somewhere past the Emperor's shoulder. He had delivered his report 3 times. Each retelling met with the same stunned silence. "Explain again," Emperor Solarius said, his voice like grinding stones, "how a primitive species disabled one of our scout vessels." "Electromagnetic pulse technology, Your Majesty. Crude but effective. They attached a device directly to the hull and detonated it. The pulse overwhelmed our systems temporarily. And this weapon, it's primitive. Ancient sire, we abandoned such crude methods over 2,000 years ago." Solarius leaned forward, bioluminescent patterns shifting to deep orange. "Then how did they penetrate our defenses?" "They didn't, Your Majesty. We weren't defending against physical contact. Our protocols assume energy weapon attacks from distance. A ship simply approaching and attaching an explosive device was unprecedented." A murmur rippled through the assembled counselors. 300 species represented in this chamber. 300 worlds that had submitted to imperial rule, all watching to see how the Emperor would respond to this anomaly. Captain Vorian stepped forward from his position at the chamber's periphery. Half his face gleamed with cybernetic enhancements, silver circuits tracing patterns across temple and jaw. His organic eye was deep purple, but his mechanical one glowed cold blue, constantly processing, analyzing. "Your Majesty, if I may." Solarius gestured permission. "I've reviewed the scouts' data. The humans' attack was crude but clever. They identified a weakness in our protocols and exploited it. More concerning is the implication, which is, they were prepared, sire. The attack occurred 9 weeks after our scout entered their system. That suggests they had the weapon ready or could construct it quickly. Either option indicates forethought we don't typically see in species at their developmental stage." The Emperor's patterns flared bright red. "You're suggesting these primitives anticipated our arrival." "I'm suggesting they're more observant than our assessment indicated. They may have detected our other scout missions in neighboring systems. They may have concluded that contact was inevitable and prepared accordingly." Solarius stood his massive frame, casting the chamber into shadow. "Then we send sufficient force to eliminate any possibility of resistance. Admiral Zephyros assemble a fleet, 20 battlecruisers, more than enough to overwhelm any defense they could mount." Zephyros's scales rippled, the Zerathian equivalent of a frown. "Your Majesty, perhaps negotiation." 20 ships, Admiral. You will offer them one final opportunity to submit peacefully. If they refuse, you are authorized to use whatever force necessary to secure compliance. But try not to exterminate them. A species clever enough to damage our scout might prove valuable once properly educated. "Yes, Your Majesty." As Zephyros turned to leave, Captain Vorian fell into step beside him. They walked in silence through crystalline corridors until they were alone. "You disagree with the Emperor's assessment," Vorian said quietly. "I disagree with underestimating any opponent. These humans damaged an Imperial vessel. That's never happened during first contact. They used technology we abandoned millennia ago. Hardly sophisticated." Zephyros stopped walking, turned to face the half-cybernetic strategist. "You're the best tactical mind in the Empire, Vorian. You've never lost a battle. Tell me, when was the last time an opponent surprised you?" Vorian's mechanical eye whirred, focusing and refocusing. "The Krell uprising, 43 years ago. And how did that end? Poorly, for the Krell, but not before they cost us 17 ships and 12,000 lives. Because we underestimated them." "Exactly." Zephyros's golden eyes held steady. "These humans surprised us once. I intend to ensure they don't surprise us again." "Then perhaps I should accompany your fleet. A second perspective. One organic, one mechanical. I was hoping you'd volunteer." 3 months later, Admiral Zephyros's fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Sector 7, a neutral zone of space 3 light-years from Earth. 20 battlecruisers arranged themselves in perfect formation, each one a masterwork of elegant engineering, sleek hulls that seemed to flow rather than fly. Energy signatures so refined they barely disturbed background radiation. Weapons ports glowing with barely contained power. Beautiful, deadly, certain of victory. Zephyros stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sovereign Fist, watching scanners for the human response. Beside him, Captain Vorian's mechanical eye processed data streams invisible to organic vision. They're approaching, Vorian said. Single vessel, range 40,000 kilometers and closing. On screen, the view screen flickered to life, and both officers simply stared. The human ship was nothing like what they'd expected. Where Imperial vessels flowed, this one plowed. Where they gleamed, this one glowered. It looked less like a spacecraft and more like a flying fortress, a brutal declaration of intent carved from metal and ceramic composite. What is that? Commander Krell Zephyros' second officer breathed. Vorian's organic eye narrowed while his mechanical one zoomed in, analyzing. Multi-layered armor plating, at least 6 layers deep. I'm reading 12 separate fusion cores, not one centralized reactor. Distributed computer systems, no single processor I can detect. Redundant power grids. It looks like they built a bunker and strapped engines to it, Krell sneered. It looks, Zephyros corrected quietly, like they built something that expects to take damage and plan to survive it. The human ship Defiance, according to transponder signal, slowed to a stop 30,000 kilometers from the Imperial formation. Far enough to run if needed, close enough to talk and to fight. Open a channel, Zephyros ordered. The view screen split. On one side, the Defiance hung in darkness. On the other, a human face appeared. Stellan Korin looked exactly as Zephyros had imagined from studying Earth's broadcasts. Young by Imperial standards, barely into his 5th decade, but with eyes that held the weight of understanding what came next. Nordic features, ice blue eyes, the kind of calm that came from accepting terrible possibilities. Admiral Zephyros, Stellan said. His voice was steady, professional. You asked me to come. I'm here. Captain Korin, thank you for accepting my invitation. Zephyros gestured at the formation surrounding him. You'll forgive the escort. The Emperor insists on proper protocol. 20 battlecruisers seems like substantial protocol for one primitive species. A flicker of something respect amusement crossed Zephyros' scaled face. You disabled our scout. The Emperor was impressed and concerned, perhaps both. And you, Admiral, what are you? Zephyros considered the question carefully. Curious. Your vessel is unlike anything in our database. The design philosophy is aggressively defensive, paradoxical but effective looking. We call it deterrence. You built this in 3 months. We built this in 97 days with help from 47 nations working together. Not one country, Admiral. One planet. United. That clearly surprised Zephyros. His bioluminescent patterns flickered yellow. Your species has a reputation for division, conflict, centuries of wars. We do, but we learned something from those wars. What's that? Stellan leaned forward slightly. That we fight better together than apart, and that sometimes the only way to keep peace is to be very, very prepared for war. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the soft background hum of electronics and bridge crews breathing on both sides. Finally, Zephyros spoke again. Captain Korin, I am authorized by Emperor Solarius to extend one final offer. Submit to Imperial protection peacefully. Your species will be granted junior partnership status. Protected, guided, given access to technologies that will advance your civilization by centuries. In exchange for your autonomy, your independence, your right to make decisions for yourselves without Imperial oversight. That's what I thought. Stellan's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped half an octave. Admiral, my daughter is 8 years old. Her name is Lyra. She has red hair and green eyes, and she draws pictures of spaceships in elementary school. Last week, she asked me if aliens would try to make us not human anymore. Zephyros found himself leaning forward despite himself. I told her, Stellan continued, that being human means making our own choices, even hard choices, even choices that might cost us everything, and that I would never ever let someone take that away from her, or from 8 billion others, even if resistance means your destruction. Especially then, because survival without choice isn't survival. It's just existing, and humans don't exist, Admiral. We live, we choose, we remain free, or we die trying. The bridge of the Defiance was utterly silent behind Stellan, 700 people holding their breath. Then Zephyros said slowly, we have nothing more to discuss. We could discuss peace as equals instead of submission as subjects. We could discuss partnership instead of protection. We could discuss many things, Admiral, but not if you insist on treating us as primitives to be managed rather than people to be respected. The Empire does not negotiate with species who cannot demonstrate their worth. Then the Empire is about to get a demonstration. Stellan's hand moved to close the connection, but Zephyros raised one scaled hand. Captain, one question before we begin. Ask. Your ship's name, Defiance. You chose it deliberately. I did. Why? Stellan smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Because even if we lose today, Admiral, I want you to remember that we didn't surrender. We defied, and that matters more than you know. The screen went dark. For 10 seconds, neither fleet moved. Then Admiral Zephyros spoke 4 words that would echo through Imperial history. All ships, open fire. The first energy beams lanced across 30,000 kilometers of void in less than a tenth of a second. 20 battle cruisers unleashing perfectly coordinated salvos, their targeting computers calculating intersecting fire patterns that should have vaporized any vessel caught in the crossfire. The Defiance didn't vaporize. On the bridge, Stellan gripped his command chair as the gravitational lens emitters spun to full power. Shields active. What happened next would be studied by xenotechnologists for generations. The energy beams didn't hit the Defiance. They bent around it. Space itself warped in a carefully calculated bubble around the human ship, a distortion of gravity that treated photons and particles like water sliding off a curved surface. The beams that should have pierced the hull simply redirected, sliding off into empty space, dissipating harmlessly. On the Sovereign, Fist alarm screamed. "Status," Zephyros demanded. "Admiral, our weapons fire is being deflected. They're using some kind of gravitational manipulation to bend space around their vessel. Recalculate all ships, concentrated fire on a single point. 20 cruisers adjusted targeting. 20 weapon systems focused on 1 square meter of the Defiance's hull. The combined energy output was enough to crack a small moon. The beams converged. The beams bent. The Defiance sat in the center of a storm of firepower that should have annihilated it, taking no damage whatsoever. "This cannot be," Commander Krell whispered. Johannes Stellan's voice crackled over the open channel, calm as if discussing weather. "Your weapons are very impressive, refined over millennia, I'm sure. Perfect energy coherence, minimal waste, elegant." A pause. "Our turn." Panels slid open along the Defiance's hull. What emerged looked primitive to Imperial eyes: physical barrels, magnetic rails, the kind of kinetic weapon systems the Empire had abandoned 2,000 years ago as crude and inefficient. "They're using mass drivers," Krell laughed, "against energy shields." Vorian wasn't laughing. His mechanical eye had calculated the energy signatures building in those railgun assemblies, had measured the magnetic field strength, had extrapolated the potential velocity. "All ships," he said urgently, "evasive maneuvers. Now." Too late. The Defiance fired. 50 grams of tungsten carbide composite accelerated to 80% of light speed, crossed 30,000 kilometers in less than a heartbeat. The Imperial shields, designed to stop energy weapons by matching energy with opposing energy, offered no resistance to simple mass moving at relativistic velocity. The projectile punched through the shield of the cruiser. Radiant dawn, like it wasn't there, tore through the hull, through 3 interior bulkheads, and exited the other side before anyone aboard even registered they'd been hit. Atmosphere vented. Lights failed. The radiant dawn went dark and began to tumble. The Defiance fired again, and again. 3 more Imperial cruisers took catastrophic hits in as many seconds. One lost its main reactor, another lost propulsion. The third exploded its ammunition storage, struck by a projectile moving too fast to be stopped by anything except solid matter. "Evasive," Zephyros roared. "All ships scatter formation." The elegant battle group dissolved into chaos as 20 warships tried to maneuver away from an opponent that had just demonstrated it could kill them with impunity. On the Defiance, Stellan watched the tactical display with no satisfaction, only grim necessity. "Casualties," Tarek reported quietly. "Lieutenant Kalen Frost's section took a hit when shields failed for 0.3 seconds. Direct energy beam penetration. Engineering Section 4. Stellan's hands tightened on his chair. "Survivors." "Checking now, sir." The battle continued. Chaos and fire and the mathematics of violence. 5 more Imperial ships disabled in 90 seconds of systematic targeting. 9 ships now drifting powerless. 11 remaining. And then the comm crackled from engineering. "Bridge, this is Dr. Magnus Holt in medical." The 64-year-old surgeon's voice was tight with controlled emotion. "Section 4 casualties confirmed. Lieutenant Frost and 6 engineers. They didn't make it. Explosive decompression." Stellan closed his eyes. Kalen Frost, Canadian, 20 years reactor maintenance. Had a wife in Toronto and a son at McGill. Dead, 6 others with him, 7 souls in the first 30 seconds of combat. "Log their names," Stellan said quietly. "All 7, full honors." "Was Sir Bon?" Tarek said, "We have tactical advantage. Should we press?" "No, ceasefire. Let them regroup. Give Admiral Zephyros a chance to think about whether this is worth continuing." Across the void, Admiral Zephyros was thinking very hard indeed. 9 ships disabled, 700 Imperial crew dead or dying. The finest warships in the Solarian fleet rendered impotent by weapons technology so old it predated Imperial civilization. Simple physics, mass times velocity. Status report, he demanded. Radiant Dawn, Silent Observer, Crystal Wind, Eternal Grace, and 5 others all disabled, sir. Casualties still being compiled, but estimated at 400 minimum. Remaining ships are maneuvering to avoid engagement range. 11 ships left, against 1. And Zephyros found himself reconsidering every assumption he'd made about this engagement. Sir, Commander Krell snarled, we still outnumber them. We can overwhelm their weapons through attrition. Sacrifice a few more ships if needed. Sacrifice. Zephyros's voice was ice. You speak of sacrificing ships and crews as if they were game pieces, Commander. We're at war, are we, or are we engaged in a punitive expedition against a species that just proved they can kill us? Zephyros turned from the viewport. There's a difference. The Emperor commanded. The Emperor commanded that I secure this species' submission. He did not command that I waste Imperial lives in a battle we might not win. Krell's scales flushed dark purple with shock. Not win against one primitive ship. That primitive ship has disabled nearly half my fleet in 3 minutes of combat. I will not throw more lives away for pride. But even as he spoke, sensors detected new power fluctuations from the Defiance. Admiral, Vorian said quietly, their gravitational shielding is drawing enormous energy. Their fusion cores are running at maximum capacity. If we force them to maintain defensive posture long enough, their systems will overheat and fail. Zephyros nodded slowly. A war of attrition. It's our only tactical advantage. They can kill us, but they can't sustain their defenses indefinitely. Before Zephyros could respond, the Defiance fired again. Not at command centers or reactors. At propulsion systems. Communications arrays, weapons ports, surgical strikes that disabled rather than destroyed. 4 more ships went dark in 30 seconds, their crews alive, but their vessels rendered combat ineffective. 7 ships left. And Zephyros understood what was happening. The humans weren't trying to win through annihilation. They were trying to prove conquest would cost more than it was worth. Sir, Krell pleaded, we must respond. Zephyros looked at his second officer, this loyal soldier who had served him for 40 years, who believed absolutely in the righteousness of Imperial power. No, he said quietly. Admiral, I said no. Cease fire. All ships stand down. The bridge erupted in shocked protests. Zephyros silenced them with a gesture. Open a channel to the Defiance. Stellan's face appeared on screen. He looked tired, determined, grieving though Zephyros couldn't yet know why. Admiral, Stellan said, have you reconsidered? I have. Captain Corrin, in 6,000 years of Imperial expansion, no newly contacted species has ever inflicted this level of damage on a Solarian battle group. You've disabled 13 of my ships. You've killed, he checked casualty reports, at least 400 of my crew. I'm aware. Stellan's voice was heavy. I'm also aware that I've lost 7 people in the opening engagement. They had names Admiral, families. They died because your empire doesn't believe in asking permission before demanding submission. 7 against 400. The humans had paid a terrible price for their resistance. And they were still fighting. This could continue, Zephyros said. I have 7 ships remaining. You have 1. I could overwhelm you through sheer attrition. You could, it would cost you 4, maybe 5 more ships, maybe all of them. And in the end, you'd limp home having spent 20 battle cruisers to conquer 1 primitive planet that built 1 primitive ship. Stellan leaned forward. Is that a victory you want to report to your Emperor, Admiral? Silence. Stellan continued. We could stop. Right now, you retreat with your wounded. We retreat with ours. You go back and tell Emperor Solarius that humanity is willing to talk. As equals. Not as subjects, but as partners. Not through submission, but through mutual respect. Zephyros's bioluminescent patterns flickered through a dozen colors, reflecting thoughts racing through his tactical mind. To continue was to risk total defeat, unlikely but possible. To retreat was to acknowledge the unthinkable that a primitive species had fought the Solarian Empire to a standstill. But to return home with 13 disabled ships and 400 dead having accomplished nothing, that was failure. Captain Corrin, he said slowly, I have underestimated your species. That rarely happens, and it is educational when it does. Does that mean you'll talk? It means I will recommend to the Emperor that negotiation is preferable to extermination. Whether he listens is beyond my control. It's a start, Admiral. Zephyros nodded once, a human gesture he'd learned from cultural databases. My ships will withdraw to the edge of this sector. You will withdraw to your planet. We will resume contact in one standard cycle through diplomatic channels. Is this acceptable? It is. The screen went dark. Zephyros turned to his bridge crew, all staring at him with expressions ranging from shock to something uncomfortably close to horror. You surrendered, Krell whispered. You surrendered to primitives. I prevented a massacre on both sides. Zephyros's voice hardened. And if you ever question my command again, Commander, you will find yourself reassigned to survey duty on the Galactic Rim. Are we clear? Krell's scales faded to pale gray. Yes, Admiral. All ships, prepare for withdrawal. Retrieve what survivors you can from disabled vessels. We're going home. As the battered Imperial fleet began its slow retreat, Vorian approached Zephyros privately. That was either the wisest decision you've ever made, the cybernetic officer said quietly, or it will end your career. Zephyros watched the human ship on the view screen, that ugly, brutal, magnificent testament to a species that refused to kneel. Perhaps both, he said, but I'll sleep tonight knowing I didn't waste thousands of lives to prove a point. History will remember this day, Vorian. I hope it remembers us as wise rather than weak. Only time will tell. And the Sovereign Fist and its remaining fleet limped into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind 13 disabled hulks and the kind of silence that follows revelations. On the bridge of the Defiance, Stellan Korin slumped in his command chair. Final casualty count, he said quietly. Tarek's voice was thick. 7 confirmed dead from Engineering Section 4. Lieutenant Kalen Frost, Engineers Paulo Santos, Dmitry Volkov, Yuki Tanaka, Hassan al-Rashid, Marie Dubois, and Technician Ananya Reddy. 17 wounded, 3 critically. Dr. Holt is working, but he's asking for additional medical personnel. Stellan closed his eyes. 7 names. 7 families about to learn they'd lost someone. 7 futures ended because he'd asked them to stand between humanity and an empire. Prepare casualty notifications, he said. I want to personally contact every family and schedule a memorial service. They deserve better than they got today. Sir, Raina Blackwood said softly from navigation, we won. Did we? Stellan opened his eyes. 7 people died, Ensign. We didn't win. We survived. There's a difference. But even as he said it, he knew it was enough. They had survived. They had fought the Solarian Empire to a standstill. They had proven that humanity was not prey. And somewhere on Earth, an 8-year-old girl with red hair was waiting for her father to come home. Time to deliver on that promise. Set course for Earth, Stellan ordered, and someone open a comm to NORAD. Tell them we're coming back. Not all of us, but enough. The Defiance turned for home, scarred and bloodied, but unbroken. Behind them, the wreckage of Imperial certainty drifted in the dark. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of negotiation had begun. The Defiance limped into Earth orbit 31 hours after the Battle of Sector 7. Its hull bore scars that would never fully heal, deep gouges where Imperial energy beams had found microsecond gaps in the gravitational shields, scorched plating where near misses had superheated armor, and one terrible wound in Engineering Section 4 where explosive decompression had claimed 7 souls in an instant. Stellan Korin stood on the observation deck watching Earth rotate slowly beneath them. Blue and white and green, impossibly beautiful after days in the black. Somewhere down there, Lyra was waiting. Mira was waiting. A world of 8 billion people who didn't yet know the full price their defenders had paid to keep them free. Behind him, the door hissed open. He didn't turn. Sir, Commander Tarek Ashford's voice was raw from too many emergency orders and not enough sleep. Final casualty report from Dr. Holt. Stellan's reflection in the reinforced glass showed no expression, but his hands clasped behind his back trembled slightly. Tell me. 7 dead in the initial engagement. Lieutenant Kalen Frost and 6 engineers in Section 4. Tarek paused. But we've lost 77 more in the past 30 hours. Critical wounds from the follow-up exchanges, systems failures, complications from injuries. Dr. Holt did everything he could, but 84 total. Yes, sir. 84 confirmed dead. 121 wounded, 14 still critical. The wounded will survive, Holt says, but it'll take months of treatment. 84 families about to learn they'd lost someone. 84 futures ended. 12% of his crew gone. The mathematics of survival. Names all logged. Tarek handed him a tablet. I've prepared individual notifications for families. And Sir Norad is asking when you'll address the planet. The whole world is watching. They want to know what happened. They want to know if we won. Did we win, Tarek? The Egyptian-American commander was quiet for a long moment. We survived. The aliens retreated. That's victory by any definition I know. Then you don't know the same definition as those 84 families. Stellan finally turned from the window. His ice-blue eyes held something ancient and exhausted. What do we tell them? That their loved ones died heroically, that their sacrifice saved humanity. Those are words, Tarek. Just words. They don't bring anyone back. They're true words. Truth doesn't make them less painful. Stellan scrolled through the list on the tablet. 84 names. He read each one, slowly committing them to memory. Lieutenant Kalen Frost, 47. Canadian. Engineers, Paulo Santos, 43, Brazilian. Dmitry Volkov, 51, Russian. Yuki Tanaka, 38, Japanese. Hassan al-Rashid, 45, Saudi. Marie Dubois, 49, French. Technician Ananya Reddy, 41, Indian. The first 7, dead in seconds. Then the others. Chief Engineer Lysander Quinn, 52, Irish-American, who'd held together the fusion containment system for 3 hours after it should have failed, buying time for others to evacuate before the radiation took him. Weapons Officer Darian Cross, 49, Jamaican British, who'd stayed at his post coordinating firing solutions, even as his station filled with toxic smoke from electrical fires. Dr. Magnus Holt, 64, Norwegian, the chief surgeon who'd worked for 41 consecutive hours treating wounded before his heart simply gave out. 84 names, 84 reasons this piece had to last. Schedule the memorial for 1 week from today, Stellan said quietly. Arlington National Cemetery, full honors. 23 nations represented among the dead. Every flag flies. Sir, the president wants you to speak. To the world, they need to hear from you. The world can wait. The families can't. I need to contact each one personally before any public statement. They deserve to hear it from me first, not from a broadcast. Tarek nodded. I'll arrange the calls. And sir, the crew is asking about you. They need to see you. They need to know their captain is okay. I'm not okay, Tarek. 84 people died under my command. But I'm functional. That'll have to be enough. Stellan walked past his second officer toward the bridge where his remaining 616 crew maintained their posts with the quiet professionalism of people who'd seen the abyss and chosen to keep working anyway. As he entered, the bridge crew stood at attention. As you were, he said quietly. Raina Blackwood looked up from navigation. The 29-year-old South African had worked her station for 18 straight hours during the battle, calculating evasive patterns that had saved lives. Her new husband they'd married 2 weeks before launch, taking Stellan's advice, had sent 6 messages asking if she was alive. She'd answered 3. Captain, she said softly, incoming transmission. It's Admiral Zephyros. Private channel request. Stellan felt his shoulders tighten. Put him through. My ready room. Audio only. The small office off the bridge was Spartan: a desk, a chair, a viewport showing Earth rotating below. Stellan sat activated the comm. Admiral Zephyros. Captain Corin. The alien's voice carried none of its usual certainty. I am calling to express something that does not translate well into your language. Regret, perhaps, or acknowledgement of cost. I know the word you're looking for, Admiral. It's called grief. A pause. Yes, grief. I have spent the past 30 hours informing families across 17 Imperial worlds that their loved ones died because I underestimated a species I considered primitive. I have written 417 individual notifications. I expect many more will die from injuries in the coming days. I've written 84, Stellan said quietly. So far. Silence stretched between them. 2 commanders, 2 species, 2 civilizations separated by light years, but united in the burden of command. I reported to Emperor Solarius, Zephyros said finally. He was displeased with my decision to withdraw. I imagine so. He has, however, agreed to diplomatic talks. Not submission, negotiation. You have achieved what you set out to achieve, Captain Corin. At the cost of 84 lives. At the cost of nearly 500 lives if we count both sides. Zephyros's voice hardened slightly. Do not monopolize grief, Captain. We both bear this weight. Stellan closed his eyes, accepting the rebuke. You're right, I apologize. As do I, for initiating combat, for assuming superiority, for many things. Another pause. Your restraint during battle, when you had tactical advantage. You could have destroyed my entire fleet. Killing you wouldn't have solved anything. It would have just made the Empire send a bigger fleet, one that wouldn't have retreated. So you chose mercy. I chose survival. There's a difference. Stellan opened his eyes, staring at Earth through the viewport. My species has a long, bloody history, Admiral. We've learned the hard way what happens when you pursue total victory. When you destroy your enemies instead of turning them into partners. 1945. World War II ended. We could have destroyed Germany and Japan utterly, salted the earth, ensured they'd never rise again. Why didn't you? Because wise people realized that creating lasting peace required helping enemies rebuild, not grinding them into dust. The Marshall Plan, billions of dollars to reconstruct Europe. Former enemies became allies. That's the lesson I carried into battle. Zephyros was quiet for a long moment. I studied your military history during the 3 months you built your ship. Your species' capacity for violence is remarkable, but so is your capacity for reconciliation. You fight viciously and then extend hands in peace. It's confusing to those of us who view conquest as natural order. Maybe that's why we survive contact with the Empire. We know both how to fight and how to stop fighting. Both are necessary. I will convey this to the Emperor, along with my strong recommendation that we approach humanity not as subjects to be managed, but as partners to be respected. Whether he listens is beyond your control. You said that before. And I mean it more now than I did then. A pause. Safe journey home, Captain Corrin, and my condolences for your 84. I mean that sincerely. And mine for your 417 Admiral. May they be the last casualties between our peoples. I hope so. I truly do. The comm went silent. Stellan sat alone in his ready room for 10 minutes, gathering himself before returning to the bridge to face his crew and prepare for the descent to Earth. To face the families. To explain why their loved ones weren't coming home. The memorial service was held on a gray November morning, 3 weeks after the battle. Arlington National Cemetery spread across 600 acres of Virginia soil, white headstones marching in perfect rows across gentle hills. It held 400,000 graves, each one marking a life given in service to country, to ideals, to something larger than self. Today it would hold 84 more. But these were different. These hadn't died for a single nation. They died for a species, for the right of 8 billion humans to remain human on their own terms. The flags came first, 23 nations represented among the dead. 47 American flag soles from across the United States, but also Canada's maple leaf, Brazil's green and gold, Russia's tricolor, Japan's rising sun, South Africa's multicolored banner, Norway's red, white, and blue, Saudi Arabia's script and sword, France's tricolor, India's orange, white, and green, Jamaica's diagonal cross, Ireland's tricolor, Britain's Union Jack, each flag carried by an honor guard in full dress uniform. Each flag placed beside a flag-draped coffin containing someone who'd chosen to stand between humanity and submission. Stellan Corrin stood at attention in his dress uniform watching the procession. Beside him stood General Theron Cade, who'd authorized the Defiance Protocol and now bore witness to its cost. Behind them, the entire surviving crew of the Defiance, 616 men and women who'd come to say goodbye to their shipmates. The families sat in rows of folding chairs arranged before the coffins, wives and husbands, children and parents, brothers and sisters, some crying openly, others stone-faced with grief too deep for tears. Stellan spotted Kaelin Frost's widow in the third row. She held their son, 14 years old now, red-eyed, wearing his father's Canadian Forces cap. The boy met Stellan's eyes across the distance and nodded once, a man's gesture in a child's face accepting what couldn't be changed. Raina Blackwood sat with her husband, his arm around her shoulders. She'd survived. So many others hadn't. The randomness of it haunted her. The President of the United States spoke first. Words about duty and sacrifice and the price of freedom. They were good words, well delivered, carefully crafted by speechwriters to honor the dead, all without dwelling on the horror of how they died. They meant nothing to Stellan. He'd heard too many speeches at too many funerals. They all said the same thing: these deaths mattered, these lives had meaning, we honor them. But honor didn't bring them back. When it was Stellan's turn to speak, he stood at the podium and looked out at 84 coffins arranged in perfect rows, each one containing someone who'd trusted him to bring them home. "I'm not going to tell you that your loved ones died heroically," he said. His voice carried across the cemetery without amplification, hard and clear and utterly honest. "I'm not going to tell you they gave their lives willingly. They didn't. They wanted to come home, every single one of them." Which murmurs rippled through the assembled crowd. This wasn't the script. This wasn't the sanitized narrative of noble sacrifice. This was truth. Lieutenant Kaelin Frost was supposed to retire next year, Stellan continued. He had 20 years in reactor maintenance. He'd earned his peace. But when I asked for volunteers to crew the Defiance, he stepped forward. Not because he wanted to die, because he had a son and he wanted that son to grow up free. His eyes found the boy in the third row. Chief Engineer Lysander Quinn had twin daughters in Dublin, 12 years old. He showed me their picture every day, told me they were going to be engineers like him. He stayed at his post for 3 hours with radiation poisoning, killing him slowly because he knew if he left, the containment would fail and take half the ship with him. He bought time for others to live, and it cost him everything. Stellan continued down the list, Dr. Magnus Holt, who'd come out of retirement at 64 to serve as chief surgeon, who'd worked himself to death, saving others. Weapons officer Darian Cross, who'd had a daughter at Cambridge studying astrophysics, who'd coordinated firing solutions through toxic smoke until his lungs gave out. Ensign Paulo Santos, who'd been planning to propose to his girlfriend when he got home. 84 names, 84 stories, 84 futures that ended in the black between stars because Stellan Corin had asked them to stand in front of an empire. After the battle, he said, his voice dropping, "I had the opportunity to destroy Admiral Zephyros's remaining ships. My weapons officer requested permission to target life support systems, to end it decisively, to avenge our dead." The cemetery was absolutely silent. I said no. Stellan's hands gripped the podium. I chose restraint. I chose to disable ships instead of destroying them. I chose to let the enemy retreat instead of pressing our advantage while 84 of my crew lay dead. He looked up, meeting the eyes of the families. I have spent every day since wondering if that choice dishonored the people who died, giving me that advantage. Whether I should have destroyed them all. Whether mercy was weakness. His voice strengthened. But I hope they would understand. Because the reason we fought wasn't revenge. It wasn't about killing aliens. It was about proving that humanity deserves respect. That we're not primitives to be managed. That we're people who choose our own path. Stellan gestured at the coffins. December 7th, 1941. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. America could have responded with total war. Could have matched atrocity with atrocity, burned their cities, salted their earth. We didn't. We fought hard, we fought smart, but when victory came, we helped rebuild. Japan became an ally. That's the lesson I carried into battle. He paused, letting that sink in. June 6th, 1944. D-Day, Allied forces invaded Normandy. They could have executed German prisoners, massacred surrendering soldiers. They didn't. They took prisoners, treated them according to the Geneva Conventions, showed that even in war, humanity has rules we don't break. Another pause. 1950, the Korean War. We learned that sometimes you fight not for conquest but for principle. That sometimes the goal isn't victory, but preventing defeat. That holding the line matters even when you can't advance. Stellan's voice became almost gentle. These 84 people died so those lessons would be remembered. So that when humanity met aliens for the first time, we would show them we're strong enough to be merciful, fierce enough to be feared, wise enough to choose peace when we had the power to choose war. That's who we are. That's who they died protecting. He stepped back from the podium and saluted the coffins. 600 voices echoed the gesture. The burial detail began their work, and Stellan walked among the families, shaking hands, accepting embraces from people who'd lost everything so he could bring the Defiance home. Kalen Frost's son approached him near the end, 14 years old, standing too straight, holding himself together through sheer will. "Sir," the boy said, "my dad, did he suffer?" Stellan knelt to look him in the eyes. This boy deserved truth, not comfortable lies. It was very fast, explosive decompression. He wouldn't have had time to be afraid. I promise you that. It was mostly true, fast enough that fear wouldn't have lasted long. He talked about me, the boy asked. Every day, he showed me your picture. Told me you were studying engineering at McGill, that you were going to build better reactors than he ever did. He was so proud of you. The boy's lip trembled. I don't know if I can now. Every time I think about reactors, I'll think about how he died in one. Then you'll honor him every day, by remembering, by building, by making the world he died protecting a little bit better. Stellan gripped the boy's shoulder. That's how we keep them alive. We carry them forward. We make their sacrifices mean something. The boy nodded, tears finally breaking through his composure. His mother pulled him into an embrace, and Stellan stepped away, giving them their grief. Mira found him an hour later, standing alone near the edge of the cemetery, staring at nothing. Lara's asking for you, she said softly. I know, I just need a minute. Stellan, you did everything you could. I did what I had to do. That's not the same thing. He turned to face his wife, his partner for 15 years, the woman who'd supported him through 3 months of impossible construction and 3 weeks of impossible grief. 84 people, Mira. 84 families destroyed because I built a ship and asked them to crew it. You didn't destroy those families. The Empire did, by coming here, by demanding submission. Mira's astrophysicist mind dealt in absolutes in clear cause and effect. Your choice was never between their deaths and safety. It was between their deaths and everyone's deaths. You chose the mathematics of survival. Mathematics. Stellan laughed bitterly. That's a cold way to describe it. No, it's the accurate way, the true way. You're a captain, Stellan. You made impossible choices so 8 billion people didn't have to. She took his hand. Come home. Your daughter needs to see you. She's been drawing that ship of yours nonstop for 3 weeks. Won't talk to anyone except to ask when Daddy's coming home. I'm here. No, you're at Arlington standing among the dead. You need to come back to the living. They need you too. Stellan let her lead him away from the white stones and fresh graves back toward the car where normal life waited. But he looked back once, memorizing the scene. 84 coffins lowered into American soil. 84 names carved into marble. 84 reasons to make sure this peace lasted forever. 6 months after the Battle of Sector 7, Stellan Korin stood in a shuttle approaching Zarathi's prime, watching the crystalline planet grow larger in the viewport. Beside him sat Dr. Alara Voss, now 52 years old, who'd been studying Zarathian technology and preparing technical exchange protocols. Across from them, Commander Tarek Ashford adjusted his diplomatic uniform for the 15th time. Nervous? Stellan asked. I'm about to meet a 10,000-year-old emperor who could order my death with a gesture, and no one could stop him. Yes, I'm nervous. He won't. He invited us here. That means he's serious about negotiation. Or it means he wants to study us up close before the next invasion. Ilara laughed softly. Always the optimist, Tarek. The shuttle descended through clouds that sparkled with bioluminescent particles, landing on a platform that seemed carved from a single massive gemstone. Honor guards lined the pathway, not just Zarathian soldiers, but representatives from dozens of species, each one conquered and integrated into the Empire over millennia. They walked in silence that felt respectful rather than hostile. The Grand Council chamber took Stellan's breath away, despite his attempts at composure. The scale was inhuman, 300 meters from floor to vaulted ceiling. The beauty was alien crystalline walls that caught light from 3 suns and split it into colors that didn't exist in Earth's spectrum. And at the center, on a throne older than human civilization, sat Emperor Solarius. Stellan had seen recordings. He'd studied every available image. None of it prepared him for the reality. The being radiated presence, not through physical intimidation, though his 3-meter frame was impressive, through something older. The weight of 10,000 years of existence, the gravity of 6,000 years of absolute power. Captain Stellan Korin, the Emperor's voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. You have caused considerable disruption to my empire. Stellan bowed, slightly respect, but not submission. Your Majesty, I apologize for the inconvenience. We were defending our home. By destroying 13 of my finest warships. Disabling Your Majesty, we destroyed 4. The other 9 were disable with their crews surviving. There's a difference. A flicker of something crossed Solarius's massive face. Surprise, approval. Yes, Admiral Zephyros made particular note of your restraint. He found it unusual for a species at war. We weren't at war, Your Majesty. We were defending. There's a difference there, too. Explain. Stellan had prepared for this moment. Had rehearsed arguments about mutual benefit, technological exchange, the value of diverse perspectives. But standing before this ancient being, political answers felt hollow. So he told the truth instead. Because the alternative is endless war, Your Majesty. And wars cost. They cost lives, resources, time. But more than that, they cost the opportunity to learn from each other, to become better than we were. He gestured at the holographic charter floating between them, the Galactic Confederation proposal that had taken 6 months of negotiation to draft. Humans have fought wars for our entire history. We've destroyed cities, slaughtered populations, committed atrocities we still carry shame for thousands of years later. But we've also learned from those mistakes. We learned that conquered peoples don't stay conquered. They resist, they rebel. They remember the injustice, and they pass that memory down through generations. Stellan's ice-blue eyes held the Emperor's without flinching. But partners contribute willingly. They innovate freely. They make both sides stronger. After our Second Global War ended in 1945, My species didn't destroy Germany and Japan. We rebuilt them through something called the Marshall Plan. Billions of dollars to reconstruct former enemies. And they became some of our strongest allies. That's not weakness, Your Majesty. That's wisdom learned through blood. And you believe the Empire lacks this wisdom. I believe the Empire has been so successful for so long that it forgot why partnership matters. Because partnership doesn't just make you stronger, it makes you better. It challenges your assumptions. It forces you to grow. Silence stretched across the vast chamber. 300 representatives from 300 worlds all watching to see how the Emperor would respond. Finally, Emperor Solarius stood, his patterns shifting through colors Stellan had no names for. Captain Corrin, in 6,000 years of rule, no one has spoken to me as you just did. Most species beg for mercy. Some threaten futilely. None have ever suggested that the Empire itself might benefit from changing. And I find myself considering it. The Emperor walked down from his throne with slow, deliberate steps. Each footfall echoed like a heartbeat through the crystalline chamber. Your species is young, arrogant in the way only the young can be, technologically primitive by our standards. But you possess something we may have lost in our millennia of dominance. What's that, Your Majesty? Humility through failure. You've failed enough to know how to learn from failure. We've succeeded so long that we've forgotten that failure teaches lessons. Success cannot. Solarius reached the holographic charter, studying it with eyes that had watched stars be born. I will accept these terms, not because you defeated my fleet, though that factors into my decision, but because I'm curious what happens when the Empire stops conquering and starts collaborating, when we treat new species as partners rather than subjects. He turned to face Stellan directly, and the weight of 10,000 years of wisdom pressed down like atmosphere. But understand this, Captain. If humanity proves unworthy of this trust, if you abuse this partnership or threaten the stability I've maintained for 6 millennia, I will personally ensure your species is reduced to ash. The defiance was impressive, but I have weapons you cannot imagine, fleets that would darken your sun. Am I absolutely clear? Perfectly, Your Majesty. Good. Then let us sign this charter and see if an empire can learn to become a confederation. The ceremony took 4 hours. Representatives from 1,247 worlds bore witness as Emperor Solarius and Captain Stellan Corrin, one ancient beyond human comprehension, one barely past his 4th decade, placed their marks on a document that would reshape galactic civilization. The Galactic Confederation was born, not through conquest, through conversation. Admiral Zephyros approached Stellan after the signing, his azure scales showing patterns of what might have been satisfaction. You did it, Captain. You changed 6,000 years of imperial policy with one battle and one conversation. We did it, Admiral. You could have continued fighting. You chose to retreat and recommend negotiation. That took courage. Or cowardice. My career may not survive this. Then you'll join me in ignominy. Half my own military thinks I'm a fool for showing restraint, but history will remember us as the commanders who chose peace when we could have chosen war. That's not a bad legacy. Zephyrus's golden eyes gleamed with something that might have been respect. No, it's not. As Stellan prepared to board his shuttle for the return to Earth, Captain Vorian approached the half-cybernetic strategist whose analysis had helped convince the Emperor to negotiate. Captain Corrin, a moment if you please. They walked to a private observation deck overlooking Zarathi's Prime's triple suns. I need to tell you something, Vorian said quietly. Something the Emperor doesn't know I discovered. Something that will remain secret unless you choose otherwise. I'm listening. The Defiance, your ship. I've been analyzing the battle data for 6 months. Vorian's mechanical eye glowed as he pulled up holographic displays. Your gravitational shields, your fusion reactors, your railguns, all impressive, all effective. But they shouldn't have worked as well as they did. The energy requirements for maintaining gravitational lensing at that intensity should have overloaded your fusion cores within 90 seconds. Yet you maintained shields for 3 full minutes. That's impossible according to known physics. Stellan said nothing. So I analyzed your ship's energy signatures more carefully, and I found something interesting. Vorian's organic eye studied Stellan's face. Your fusion reactors aren't generating enough power for what you accomplished. Not even close. Which means you have another power source. One you didn't reveal. One you held in reserve. Stellan's expression remained neutral. That's an interesting theory. It's not a theory, it's fact. You could have fought longer, harder. You had capabilities you never showed us. Vorian leaned closer. What was it, zero-point energy antimatter? Some human innovation we haven't conceived. For a long moment, Stellan said nothing. Then very quietly, does the Emperor know? No, and I won't tell him, because I understand why you held back. You showed just enough strength to force negotiation, but not so much that you terrified the Empire into viewing you as an existential threat. You calibrated your display of force perfectly. Why tell me this? Because I want you to know that I know. That when we meet again, and we will meet again as partners in this confederation, we'll both understand that humans are still holding secrets, still capable of surprises. Vorian's mechanical eye whirred. It makes you more interesting, more worthy of respect. And it gives me hope that this partnership might actually work. Stellan studied the half-cybernetic officer for a long moment. Then he smiled slightly. We learned something from your species, Captain Vorian, from the Empire. You survived for 6,000 years by being prepared for everything. We're young, we're primitive, but we're very good at learning from those who've survived longer than us. So there is another power source. I didn't say that. You didn't deny it either. No, Stellan agreed. I didn't, and I won't. Some secrets are worth keeping, Captain. They make the universe more interesting. Vorian's organic eye crinkled with what might have been amusement. Indeed they do. Safe journey home, Captain Corrin. And congratulations. You've earned humanity a place among the stars. Try not to destroy it. We'll do our best. Arlington National Cemetery looked exactly the same as it always had. White stones, green grass, perfect rows of graves marching across gentle hills. Stellan Corrin stood before 84 headstones arranged in the Defiance Memorial. Each stone carved with a name rank and a simple phrase, they stood so others could choose. He was 62 now, white-haired where once he'd been sandy blonde, lines around his eyes from 2 decades of responsibility, back slightly bent from old injuries and the simple weight of years, but his ice-blue eyes were still sharp. Behind him, footsteps approached on the gravel path. I thought I'd find you here. He turned. Lyra stood there, 28 years old now, wearing the uniform of a Confederation captain. Her red hair had darkened to auburn over the years. Her face had her mother's delicate features, but his intensity behind the eyes. Just visiting old friends, he said. They'd be proud, you know, of what we built. Maybe, or maybe they'd be angry it required their deaths to build it at all. Dad, you can't keep carrying this. It's been 20 years. I know exactly how long it's been. 7,305 days. I've come here for 7,305 days. Lyra moved to stand beside him, looking at the stones. I met Admiral Zephyros' son yesterday. He's commanding a joint human-Zerathian patrol in Sector 12. How is he? Young, eager. Reminded me a lot of his father, actually. He asked about you. What did you tell him? That you're retired, stubborn, still teaching occasional seminars at the academy about engineering, ethics, and moral command. Still refusing medals or recognition for saving humanity. Sounds accurate. Lyra was quiet for a moment then. He told me something interesting. His father talks about the Battle of Sector 7, about how you could have destroyed their fleet but chose not to. He says it's taught an entire generation of Imperial officers that strength isn't just about winning. It's about knowing when to show mercy, when to stop. That's good to hear. Dad, you changed the galaxy. You know that, right? Not just by building the Defiance, but by knowing when to stop fighting. That's your real legacy. Stellan looked at his daughter, this fierce, brilliant woman who'd become everything he'd hoped for. Captain of the Horizon 7, leading joint species missions into unknown space, building the peace he'd fought for. My real legacy, he said quietly, is standing next to me, wearing that uniform. Working with species we almost went to war with. Making the Confederation real instead of just words on paper. Then you did good, old man. I tried. They stood together among the graves as autumn wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of approaching winter. Lyra. Yeah, Dad. Thank you for making it matter, for making their sacrifice mean something. She hugged him fiercely the way she had when she was 8 years old and scared of aliens coming from the stars. Always, she whispered. I'll always make it matter. 5 years later. Lyra Corrin, now 33, an admiral of the Confederation's Third Fleet, stood on the bridge of the CNS Unity, a vessel built jointly by humans and Zerathians, incorporating the best of both species technology. Her crew was mixed 40% human, 40% Zerathian, 20%, from a dozen other species that had joined the Confederation. They worked together with the easy familiarity of people who'd served together for years. Admiral, Her communications officer, a young Zarathian named Kellis, reported, "We're receiving a distress signal from Sector 28. Unknown species. They're requesting assistance." Unknown species. Lyra moved to the sensor display. First contact situation. Appears to be. They're broadcasting mathematical sequences, prime numbers, the universal language of intelligence. Lyra studied the data mine racing through protocols and possibilities. First contact was delicate. The wrong approach could trigger conflict. The right approach could bring a new partner into the Confederation. She thought of her father, of the choice he'd made 25 years ago when faced with the Empire. Fight or submit, resist or surrender. He'd chosen a third option, fight enough to earn respect, then extend a hand in partnership. "Set course for Sector 28, she ordered. "Maximum safe speed. And send a message. All frequencies. Mathematical sequences in response. Let them know we're coming in peace." Should we go to battle stations, Admiral? Lyra thought about the Defiance. About 84 names carved in stone. About the price her father's generation had paid so hers could explore the stars. "No, approach stations. Shields up but weapons cold. We're here to meet new friends, not make new enemies. If they prove hostile, we'll respond. But we'll give them the chance to choose peace first." "As you command, Admiral." The Unity altered course, heading toward unknown space and unknown species, carrying with it the hope that the lessons of the Defiance would echo forward through generations. That strength and mercy could coexist. That different species could become partners instead of conquerors and conquered. That the long peace could continue. Lyra stood on her bridge looking at the stars ahead and thought about her father visiting Arlington every day for 25 years, carrying 84 names in his memory, making sure their sacrifice was never forgotten. "Dad," she whispered, too quiet for anyone else to hear, "I'm making it matter every day, just like I promised." And somewhere on Earth, in a small house in Denver, Stellan Corin sat in his study, looking at a photograph of the Defiance, that ugly, brutal, magnificent ship that had changed everything. He didn't know his daughter was about to make first contact with a new species. He didn't know she would handle it perfectly, extending partnership instead of demanding submission. He didn't know that the Confederation would grow to include 17 species within his lifetime. What he knew was that 25 years ago, he'd made choices that let his daughter grow up free. That let her explore the stars. That let her build instead of just defend, and that was enough.